If I asked you to name the essential pillars of brand building right now, what would you say? Maybe a logo? Branding has to be critical to brand building, right? Then maybe a website and having a unique value proposition. Am I close? When I started out, that's what I would have said too. But years of working with brands and growing my own has taught me that success and failure goes so much deeper than just a logo. The goal of this lesson is to give you the important pillars or philosophies of brand building. These form the foundation upon which everything else you do is built. And if you have a weak or incomplete foundation, everything else you will do will suffer. But before we get into these 6 philosophies, let's start with what needs to be in place before you even begin to build your foundation. And it should go without saying, but you need to have a good product. Get that right first and don't be tempted to jump steps. As Sarah Blakely tells us, don't iterate on the customer. Past that, you have to have a good strategy, and you need to have, in business terms, a really good, unique value proposition. This just shows that you understand your product or your service. You've educated yourself on what's out there, and you understand the role that you are playing in the marketplace. For example, Creative Voices at the beginning felt really strongly that our value proposition would be live, ultra small workshops. Pre-recorded digital classes to us feel very often overpriced and under-delivering. In fact, each of us has actually been burned by them in the past. So for us, anything pre-recorded, we give away. And anything paid is always live. We want to give feedback, keep people on track, and we never want them to guess about who their customer is going to be. You need to be this clear about your strategy and your unique value before you move on. So if you are at all struggling to do so, before you go any further, head back to our Brand Strategy 101 class here on YouTube. Take a live workshop with us. Get clear on all of those things. And yes, each of these pieces that we've already listed are what most of the conversations around brand building talk about. But these are just a little tiny part of the story. And the rest that we're going to talk about today is so much squishier and fluid and harder to define. And now that I say all of that out loud, it probably explains why people are talking about it so much less. But that squishiness is important. It's what makes it the art of brand building. There's this dynamic, shifting human element to the process. And to be the best and to be memorable, you need to go to this place that's beyond data and hard numbers. Like, be informed by data, of course, but do not be defined by it. There's a very real danger to over-systemization. And I think that Hollywood is a really easy example here. Like, in this streaming era, data is so abundant. And there's this big clash between Hollywood, the business, and Hollywood, the art. And the C-suite is trying to give the public whatever it wants. Like, it's obsessively following data looking for the safest bets for raking in cash. But Hollywood is also still a haven of artists, of filmmakers who want to make stories and beauty on screen. And this is so much squishier than just synthesizing data. It's art. It's ambiguous and uncertain and deeply human. And there are no guarantees, but oh my gosh, when they succeed, it's spectacular. It's what makes us think and feel. It's memorable, it's impactful, it's engaging. And so, yes, all of the things people would talk about when it comes to brand building are important. Branding, your logo, positioning, messaging, etc. But you can do all of these things exactly right, and you can still falter. And that's why we're here today, to talk about the art of brand building, to embrace brand building as an art, not just a science, to give you tools for getting what you care about out into the world. Trust yourself. Yes, this is an ongoing effort, not a single moment decision, but commit to it and do the daily work to remind yourself that your unique instincts are a really important part of the equation. Not being cookie cutter is an advantage. And how many of us are pretty tired of so much sameness anyway? But learning to step out in authenticity is really, it's no easy task. We're biologically programmed to correlate fitting in with survival. But when it comes to brand building, imitation will only take you so far. Which is why learning to trust yourself, to trust that voice of different that you uniquely have, this is a core piece of brand building. The foundation of not just sales, but relationship building with your audience. And there are a few things that can help you on your journey to working from this place of authenticity. And the first is really to just cultivate some kindness toward yourself. Start to pay attention to the stories that you tell yourself. For me, that means learning not to pick up that first doubt. Learning to recognize that first story, that trigger, and not pick it up. And that means that I avoid that domino of negativity that follows. Another really good one is to seek out people who, rather than just dole out advice and shoulds, instead help you know for yourself what the right path is for you. Those who ask questions and help us know for ourselves, rather than just simply point us toward their own definitions of right and wrong or success and failure. And people may be well-meaning, but that doesn't mean that the outcome isn't damaging. As Carl Jung once said, the world will ask who you are, and if you do not know, the world will tell you. Take a moment here to reflect. Allow the people who've loved you well to come to mind. Feel gratitude toward them for how they've helped you on your journey. I'm actually going to be quiet for a beat so you can do this, and then we will move on together. Following paths that are not our own feels like a learning experience that most of us go through. But at some point, you have to stop and define for yourself what success looks like. What life do you actually want to live? Seek to enjoy the journey, not just the rewards and the outcomes, not just how things look to someone on the outside. And start from a place of worthiness. And as long as your list is genuine and it's meaningful to you, it's enough. So ask yourself, what's important to you? Where are you wanting to go and why? Take a few minutes to workshop this out for yourself. Start with a drop list. Just brainstorm everything you can think of that would go on your own success list for a few minutes. And then just look at the list, study it for a minute. What stands out? What are the common themes? Try to narrow down your list to around 5 key markers of success for you. There is this really useful little book by Phil Stutz called The Tools, and I highly recommend picking it up. And really near the very beginning of the book, he writes, "A few rare individuals refuse to live limited lives. They drive through tremendous amounts of pain, from rejections and failures to shorter moments of embarrassment and anxiety. They also handle the small, tedious pain required for personal discipline, forcing themselves to do the things we all know we should do but don't, like exercising, eating right, and staying organized. Because they avoid nothing, they can pursue their highest aspirations. They seem more alive than the rest of us." There is so much packed into this one short passage, but we're going to focus on just one thing. The things we all know we should do, but don't. Staying organized. This is such an overlooked superpower. It's so tedious and ordinary that we fail to really acknowledge its importance, or maybe we just don't want to see it. Either way, it's a really non-negotiable part of the equation. Tell yourself, what do you want? But tell yourself whatever you want, but if you don't do this thing, everything else is going to be infinitely harder and maybe out of reach altogether. Like, sure, you have a great idea. You've done all the research. You've got a business plan and strategy. You believe in yourself. You believe in what you're doing. You have all of these pieces. But when you fail at organization, the whole thing can just fall apart. I have seen it so many times. And the number one reason I hear is, I'm just not an organized person. As if organization is somehow the same as height, like something largely predetermined and unchangeable. It's not. There is no excuse. You can at any moment choose to cultivate organization in your life and in your work. And what we're seeking to build here is the Japanese principle of Kaizen, making small improvements every day. Instead of trying to be perfect right away, you aim to just keep getting a little bit better. And this approach is about setting small, reachable goals and slowly making progress. Always moving forward, less worried about the pace and more worried about not stopping. And this is not about maximizing your time, being organized so you can cram as much into your days as possible. Resist that hustle culture that's telling you to do more. It's not about doing more. It's about what's serving on your plate better. It's about the peace and the relaxation and the motivation that this can bring into your days. It's about enjoying the work more, not just doing more of it. Exercise, eat right, get lots of sleep, drink lots of water. It's so simple. And yet, these are the most underutilized tools for enhancing your performance and elevating your work. Not to mention, they make your days more enjoyable too. And the goal here is sustainable work, not just getting through. Because how much of our time is defined by just getting through? It's systematically ingrained in our families and our schools and our work. Just get through this week. Just get through this quarter. Just get through the holidays. Just get through this Black Friday campaign. When I say I want to help you build a dynamic and thriving brand, this is an important component of the thriving part. Building a brand requires consistency over time. Take care of yourself now so you can be in it for the long haul. You are doing no one any favors if you burn out and go out of business. If you take serving your customers seriously, you need to take sticking around seriously too. So please, take care of yourself. And speaking of consistency, brand building requires not just knowing who you are and how you communicate, but doing that consistently across all platforms. Do you sound the same in person as you do on your website? Does everyone who works for you act as a seamless extension of this same experience? If you want to elevate your brand and be the cream of the crop, be consistent. Value open-mindedness in your thinking and consistency in your execution. Have you ever clicked on a social ad and then the website looked like totally junky and different? Good things require investments of our time and our energy and attention. Give a project what it needs to be the best it can be, and don't compromise this by rushing. Don't send out an ad when the website isn't ready to be landed on yet. And a really good example that I just stumbled upon recently is the bike brand, Fazari. They just announced a rebrand. It's something like their third rebrand in 15 years. And this time they decided to simplify the brand by shortening the name Fazari to just Ari. And with it, they decided to kind of clean up the look. You can go yourself and look at before and afters and decide what you think about the content of the rebrand. But what disappointed me isn't the content, but the lack of consistency. My guess is they had a date on the calendar and they rushed it. They hit publish on a new design, they launched a new website, but they weren't ready. Half the photos on the new website still show the old bikes with the old names. It's confusing. It's sloppy. Why did they not wait until they could produce enough new content to accompany the launch? Or at the very least, digitally alter the photos to feature the new logo? This poor execution stole all of the potential value and momentum of the rebrand for me. It's nothing new. It's just a name change without freshness or resolve behind it. So I guess what I'm saying is change your mind. Don't be afraid to rethink. Constantly be coming up with ideas. The goal is not perfection, but it shows respect to yourself, your employees, to your work, and your audience to not be sloppy. Consistency isn't sloppy. Consistency is giving work what it needs to be successful across platforms, across your brand, and over time. Shortcuts might save time now, but they often end up costing you so much more in the end. Take consistency and add personality, and now we're really starting to get somewhere. This is when you start to pull away from the bulk of brands and start really carving out your own space. This is when it gets interesting. This is when you really start to hit the zone of thriving. So while consistency is the predictability across the brand over time, personality then lends the humanity and the creativity. When I come across your brand, this is how I connect with it. And it's also the reason I'm going to keep coming back. Even when I'm not paying you, I want to come back. And this is something we're going to talk about in lesson 7 because it's important. But I want you to always be looking for ways to infuse more personality, humanity, community into your work. And these don't have to be huge, time intensive, money intensive. They can be really simple strategies, and your brand strategy should help you set you up with a lot of ideas, with things that are both unique to you and also contribute to the development of your brand and your brand aesthetic. How can you add personal touches? Things like handwritten notes and cards, thank you videos, personal follow-ups. How can you add bits of your own personality? Do you like plants, art, photography, travel, movies? These can all be aspects that add little bits of depth and interest. It can set you apart from the sameness. And yes, I've used that word quite a few times already in this class, but I'm going to always be advocating for more diversity, more humanity, and less sameness until I'm blue in the face. Because this is how you start building a really rich brand experience. Selling ends when someone buys. Brand building pays attention to the post-sale experience too. While the organizational approach of sales funnels isn't to be dismissed outright, the approach does often set up this kind of hustle cycle because that experience ends at the sale. You're constantly stuck chasing new customers, new people to jam into the top of your funnel. Instead, if you prioritize brand experience and post-sale experience, you're setting yourself up to relationship build, not just sell. And personality is one way that you start to set yourself apart. By trusting your instincts, by creating something unique, you can offer something interesting. Because if I don't have anything to grab onto, why would I stick around? Personality is that important ingredient. It's that important piece of relationship building as a brand. And if you feel a little idea bankrupt here, go back to your brand strategy. A really useful tool is to put together your own brand map with all of the essentials, your brand promise and values and your brand customers, and actually physically hang it up somewhere where you work. Put it somewhere where you see it. Everyone who works with you sees it. Look at it daily. This one little habit can recenter you, recenter your focus, and keep you on track in the little daily work of meaningful brand building. Despite what the marketing messages want you to believe, There is no such thing as cruise control. We need to adjust our expectations around this. If we're hoping to work really hard now and then sit back and watch passive growth, we're setting ourselves up for failure. Work is always work. It's only a bad thing when it's meaningless or it overruns our life. But to do something with our time and our energy that we feel is important, this is really a key way that we feel engaged in our lives. So no, we're not aiming for cruise mode. Instead, we're looking to get into something we might call relaxed creator mode. For things to grow, it takes consistency. We've covered that already. It's not bursts of activity followed by absences. And this is the natural order of things. It's supposed to be this way. We plant, we tend, and growth happens. We don't plant a seed today and get tomatoes tomorrow. And by the same token, I suppose it's useful to remind us all that we can't plant today, water lovingly for a day or two until it kind of gets tedious, and then promptly begin to neglect the fragile little starts. But how often do we do this in our work? We excitedly plant, immediately get distracted, and come back some amount of time later and blame the sweet little plant for not growing, even though we didn't tend it. It's pretty unreasonable. And remember, consistency is philosophy number 4 for a reason. Because there's no magic pill. But there are seasons, annual patterns, daily patterns, and in every way that you can, try to embrace these rather than fight them, because you too are a part of nature. And what you practice will grow. What you tend will grow. And fulfillment doesn't need to be at the end of the journey. We can find it along the way too. And as Marcus Aurelius reminds us, while you're alive and able, be good.